Yo, what's up, guys? Great win for the Toronto Raptors tonight, defeating the Miami Heat 106-96. Now, guys, finally the Raptors are back from their week-long break. A week that I felt the Raptors absolutely needed to get back to their best physically, mentally, just to get away from the court. We saw the Raptors how they struggled at home on that 5-game homestand, 1-4 record, 4-game losing streak. Things were not looking good for the Raptors. RJ Barrett is obviously still out with his sprained knee, of course, guys, but glad to see the Raptors finally back on the court, guys. And it didn't start off great, obviously, this game. Miami was really shooting off the ball well. Then later on in the first quarter, Raptors started to get their game going, had a really good run at the end of the first. It was a very back and forth game the first three quarters. A lot of runs in this game. Miami started off on a run, then the Raptors would respond on a run, and then Miami would respond again on another run. It was a lot of 9-0 runs, 7-0 runs, 12-3 runs. It was a very back and forth type of game. Miami's got a lot of shooters on their team. They make a lot of three-pointers, but luckily enough, one three-point shooter on their team, Tyler Hero, wasn't playing in this game today due to a foot injury, so that was a massive boost for the Raptors. Then they also, unfortunately, Miami had that injury to Jovic, of course. He hurt his arm. I hope he's okay. He had to go off the court with a cast on his arm. So hope for a speedy recovery for that guy. It didn't look like a very good injury for him. But regardless of that, though, the Raptors responded fantastic in this game today, guys. No matter what happened, Miami would always hit them back with a run. The Raptors, like I mentioned, came back with a run of their own. They got some great minutes tonight by Jamal Shed, Grady Dick, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Colin Murray, Boyles. Those guys off the bench tonight gave the Raptors some valuable minutes. But how about the starters as well? Brandon Ingram with another massive performance. That guy's 28 points. Brandon Ingram got 28 points. Great game by Brandon Ingram tonight, guys. He was 9 of 19 from the field, 5 of 7 from 3. Brandon Ingram was the only guy in double figures at halftime for the Raptors. So he was really carrying the workload offensively for the Raptors, guys, in that first half. And then obviously in the second half, things changed a little bit. Scotty Barnes starting getting involved. Sandro Mamukelashvili got involved, like I mentioned. And like the other guys, Jamal, Grady, and Colin Murray Boyles. Jacoby Walter didn't do very much offensively, but had some decent minutes defensively. But, man, oh man, the Raptors really dug in tonight, guys. I think if it was a week ago, I think the Raptors probably lose this game, but because of the fresh legs that they had that week off, like I mentioned, paid extreme dividends to the Raptors, guys, especially in that fourth bloody quarter. The Raptors tightened up defensively. They took a 10-point lead at one point in this game. They started making some shots. Quickly was making some threes. As Jamal said, was making some shots. Scotty Barnes was making some baskets. And defensively, the Raptors really tightened up. Even Miami as well. They were playing a 2-3 zone at some time, so they had to switch things up defensively because Brandon Ingram was really torching the Heat in this game tonight. But Miami as well, they were making some shots. The Raptors did very good defensively, though, at times in this game, especially in that fourth quarter, like I mentioned, guys. Raptors outscored Miami 32-19 in that fourth quarter, did some really good things defensively. Now, offensively, there were some struggles at times in this game. The Raptors were a little bit careless with the ball, taking some ill-advised shots, really doing some stupid things offensively. Really rushing some plays, driving up the court and losing the ball off a bad handling there, or just not making the right pass. There were some things that they have to improve on. I felt that's why being a week off, that maybe affected some things. But the Raptors, they did some very, very good things. Scotty Barnes, it wasn't incredible scoring-wise, had 17, 10, and 6, but had some massive blocks, massive steals, and, that massive offensive rebound at the end of the game to get the and one and trolling the fans, man. I love Scotty Barnes, man. This guy here, even though he may not be scoring sometimes in games, he helps his team out in different ways, guys, and that's what makes Scotty such a great player, like I mentioned, with the blocks and the steals and the offensive rebounds there. But Jamal Shed as well defensively. This guy here gives me Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet type of vibes. He's such a pest defensively, drawing some offensive fouls for the Raptors, of course, making some three-pointers. This is what you love to see by Jamal Shed. Even when he drove the lane, kickouts, beautiful little floater that we saw in the fourth. Jamal Shed had some very impressive moments in this game tonight. So did Grady Dick, making some great defensive plays as well. Made a three-pointer, hustled on the offensive side as well when he had to. So I really liked what Grady did. Grady Dick did 15 minutes of play, 10 points. Listen, that's what you want from your bench. You want production. Colin Murray-Boyles didn't have as much offensive production, only having 4 points on 4 minutes, but he had that great block on Bam Adebayo. That's what you want to see from the rookie. Not being scared, going up for a massive block like that. Did some good things offensively, though, even though he didn't score as much. Had some key rebounds. This is what you want to see from the rook, being productive on the floor. Sandro Mamo, 11 points off 18 minutes there. Had some big shots, had that great end one as well. He had some very important minutes as well in this game, guys. Ochai didn't do much, 21 minutes, 5 points, guys. Quickly, not a great first half, had a better second half. I felt only having 15 points on 34 minutes. I want to see more from Emmanuel Quickly with his decision-making and his shot decisions as well. Sometimes he takes some ill-advised threes, takes some ill-advised shots, and it drives me nuts. He's our point guard, and we want him to make smarter decisions with the basketball. So I want to see that a little bit more by Emmanuel Quickly. Jakob Poeltl didn't play very much today. Miami was playing like a smaller 5, of course. So that's why you saw Sandro Mamu at some points in the game. Jakob only played 29 minutes. But B.I. and Scotty were the key factors for why the Raptors won this game today, guys. And that's what you want. You want your leaders to perform when it matters most. And like I mentioned, that 6 days off was vital for the Raptors. You can clearly see it in Brandon Ingram's play. Obviously Scotty didn't have as many points as B.I., but Scotty was all over the floor tonight. So he had some very, very good minutes. And listen, Miami, they're a solid team, okay? They're a very solid team. They have a 13-2 record leading into the fourth quarter, and the Raptors were able to pull out a win in Miami tonight, guys. So that's very impressive. And look, Miami's got some solid players. Bam Adebayo, of course, had 20 and 10. Norman Powell, who's had an incredible start to the year for the Heat. He is second all-time in points from Miami, only behind Alonzo Mourning through the first 20 games of the NBA season. And I got nothing but love and respect for Norman Powell. He's one of the biggest reasons why we got one of these hanging up at Scotiabank Arena. So nothing but love for Norman Powell. He was such a great player for the Raptors when we needed him most. I sometimes still wish we had kept Norman. I really love Norm. He had 20 points today on 34 minutes of play. Jaime Vasquez, 10 points. You had Smith with 11. Davion Mitchell with 12. He made some shots. That's why we traded Davion, because of Jamal Shed. Jamal showed incredible growth and improvement. That's why the Raptors decided to get rid of Davion. Of course, we obviously know that. Andrew Wiggins, 32 points, 10 rebounds. Man, oh man, that guy is not as good as a lot of people anticipated when he came out of Kansas. I'll tell you that much. Even though he's got a ring, he is not the player that I expected him to be. Everyone thought he was going to be the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Canada, but no. We all know what Shai is all about, but Andrew Wiggins ain't that, we'll tell you that much. But listen, man, Miami, they missed Hero tonight. They missed his shooting as well. But like I said, guys, the Raptors defense came up clutch for them. They made some big shots. Raptors shot 48% from the field, 40% from 3. Miami shot 42% from the field, only 29 from 3. So the Raptors, that's a testament to their defense, especially in the fourth quarter, making Miami take difficult shots, guys. Free throws, only getting to the line 9 times, 67%. Want to see that perfect. I want to see 9 for 9 for that, guys. But other than that, the rebounds were pretty even. Offensive rebounds, assists. Raptors had 33 to compare to Miami's 20 turnovers, though. 21 bloody turnovers. Jesus Murphy, that shit, they got to limit that crap. 21 turnovers. Miami took advantage of that, having 29 points off turnovers. The Raptors got to cut that shit down. Even though the Raptors had 22 points on Miami's 19 turnovers, Miami was able to take advantage of the points off turnovers more than the Raptors did. So I want to see that improve a little bit. Be less careless with the basketball. Points in the paint, Raptors were better by 2 points. So the game was pretty even on certain aspects of the game. But when that fourth quarter hit, Raptors turned it up a notch defensively, made some key buckets. Obviously, there were some key moments there where the Raptors had some lulls offensively. They got to cut that out as well. Too many times I've seen this season where the Raptors have spans where they're flat offensively, and we need to see them not have those type of lulls. We need to see more consistent play throughout 48 minutes. But guys, great performance for the Raptors off that 6-day break. Incredible win for them, guys. We'll see how they do in their next game, guys. We'll love to hear your comments and opinions about this game. So click like if you like this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Raptors, go as always, guys. We'll see you guys on the next episode of Raptors Unfiltered. Ciao, guys.